Section 11 of the Soul, or Rational Psychology. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Soul, or Rational Psychology, by Emanuel Swedenborg. Translated by Frank Sewall, 1837 to 1915, and others. Section 11. 6. The sense of smell. 43. The sense of smell is a still higher sense of touch, and discerns those figured parts or external angular forms which are still more simple, and which float and are borne about in the aerial atmosphere. The organs of the sense of smell are scattered throughout the whole pituitary or mucous membrane, which lines not only the cavities of the nose, but at the same time covers the walls of many of the cellules. Besides the cavities of the nostrils, there are also the frontal sinuses, cut out between the tables of the frontal bone, as also the antra of Highmore in the upper jaw, then the cellules of the cuneiform bone, and besides there are caverns and spongy and labyrinthine spaces, which all communicate with the nostrils, and are covered with a common membrane and periosteum. Through this membrane, in the head and the widest spaces, there creep myriads of vessels, and glandular and round corpuscles are interwoven in great numbers. There are 6 cavities of the sinuses, and 4 cellules of the spongious bones, which communicate with each other, and are furnished and filled with similar organs or glands. This whole expanse derives its origin from the olfactory nerves. These nerves, called otherwise the mammillary processes, affixed to the anterior part of the brain, are attenuated around the ethmoidal crest, and are transmitted by certain perforated lamina, called the cibriform and cibrous plate. It accompanies these fibres outward also, even beyond the meninx, both the pia and the dura, together with certain arterial and venous vessels. From the description of the expansion and connection of this organ, it is evident that it possesses a sense still more subtle, or of parts more simple, than does the taste. For those things which float about in the air are lighter and more volatile than those which are in the water and liquids which affect the taste. For in order that the taste may distinguish the figuration of parts, it is necessary that the compounds be dissolved. But that the smell may perceive this, it is not necessary that they be dissolved, but the very effluvia, even from the bodies, whether of animals or vegetables, as also those exhaled from minerals, are perceived by this sense. Thence are taken up those particles which do not permanently adhere to bodies, but which spontaneously are separated from them, and fly about in the air. The effluvia of the animal kingdom are so copious, that by the sense of smell alone dogs know their master from other men, and can trace out and hunt for animals. Still more copious and sensible are the effluvia of the vegetable kingdom, as the odours from gardens and fields. In the mineral kingdom, while many objects are inodorous, there are yet many which in a liquid form excite this sense. Hence the smell appears to distinguish parts more simple than those detected by the taste. But, nevertheless, the forms here are angular, in themselves heavy, inert, hard, figured, truly corporeal and material. 44. The sense of touch, taste, and smell perceive only external forms, but not internal forms, as do the senses of hearing and of sight. The external form or figure of the parts, the angularity, pointedness, plainness, roundness, is perceived by the organs of the touch, taste, and smell, but not their quality or internal forms, for only the parts along the surface affect the papilla. and because these are inert and hard, they cannot be explored by those organs as to their internal structure, which is the reason why we judge of them from the taste and odour only, and may not know whether they are wholesome or not. Thus arsenic and poisonous substances may deceive by their sugary sweetness. Their internal quality may be learned only from their effects, from which knowledge comes the chemical and medical art. But it is otherwise with the hearing and the sight. By these senses the internal forms themselves are apprehended, but not the external forms. For these are modifications and fluxions, which affect the organ according to their essential determinations. Wherefore the law of the sense of hearing and sight is entirely different from that of the smell, taste, and touch. 45. The sense of smell affects the whole brain, every medullary substance of it immediately, and mediately the cortical substance. And the brain, whose form is harmonious, shuns whatever is contrary to harmony, and seeks what is conformable to it. The sense of smell insinuates itself immediately into the whole medullary substance of the brain, and by this diffuses itself. For as soon as the fibre of its sensory penetrates the cribris lamina, it is diffused into the mammillary process, which arises close to the corpora striata, and carries its roots here and there through the whole medulla. For these processes in the niduli cavi, when they are inflated, expand the medullary substance, and keep it swollen. The roots seem to be not so widely scattered in the human brains as in the brains of the irrational animals, lest, it may be, the odours should disturb the reasonings and judgments of the human mind by inducing so frequent changes in it. In so far as the smell is extended through the whole brain, it follows that everything which injures the harmony of its parts and substances the mind is averse to, and feels to be disagreeable and offensive, while other things are conformable. The most perfect form itself is that of the brain, namely the spiral. Into this flow its cortical substances, and nearest these the fibres which thence arise. Whatever therefore is inharmonious must disagree, whether it exists at once or successively. For that which is harmonious in itself does not tolerate the inharmonious, but perceives at once what it is which is repugnant to itself and to the order of its individual parts. Thus the smell appears to affect only the general form of the brain, but not the particular form of each glandule. 46. The brain or common sensory is not affected by the sense of smell, except when its fibres are in their diastole or expansion. The whole medullous brain, or a single fibre of it, is expanded whenever the lungs are expanded. That is, whenever the air is drawn in, for the motions of the brain and of the lungs are synchronous. In every general expansion of the brain, all its fibres are restored from their most compressed position into their natural or harmonious situation. Therefore it is then only that the smell is experienced, as may be perceived by us when drawing in the breath. Moreover, the sense of smell returns when, after sneezing, the medullous brain is restored to its natural condition as to the fibres, that is, when there is no longer anything to prevent the fibres and glandules from being held distinctly apart. 47. Similar things to those observed in touch and taste are also to be observed in the sense of smell. For example, the organic substances of this sense are innumerable, and disposed throughout the entire pituitary membrane, and, taken together, they constitute the organ of smell. The perfection of the sensation of smell depends also upon the quantity, the quality, the situation, and mutual connection of these organs or glandules, that is, upon the particular form of each, and the common form of all, as again upon a certain variety, which is to be called harmonic. The reason is, because so many objects of the sense of smell are similar to those of the taste, for instance, as being figured inert, saline, sulphurous, urinous, oily, aromatic, or anything whatever of the mineral kingdom, and angular and of terrestrial form. But in the degree that this terrestrial form approaches more nearly to the circular, so much the more agreeable is the sense thence resulting. 48. The soul also perceives still purer bodies, in forms of a simple element, swimming in a still higher ether, and it disposes its organism so that those things which are agreeable may be attracted and drawn in by the more subtle pores, even to the cortex, and that by means of these the animal spirit or purer blood may be prepared. But we are not rendered conscious of the variety of these or those forms by any sense. That the sense of smell may be wonderfully perfected and exalted appears from the animals, which by smell and sagacity trace and perceive the friendly effluvia of their master, and the unfriendly effluvia of other animals, indeed often at an immense distance. But we human creatures take in by smell only those forms which swim in the air, while the beasts we have mentioned take in those which float in the ether. There is an ocean of these forms, as appears from phosphorus and innumerable other phenomena. For the atmospheres are filled full of exhalations, so that nothing shall ever be wanting, but rather constantly at hand, in order that our blood, as well the red as the white blood, and animal spirit may be supplied with those things which should enter into its composition. Besides these are the least little pores, now opened, now closed, now hungrily seizing and imbibing the wave of these subtle forms, now rejecting and discharging them, or there are moments when our cuticle stands wide extended, and when it remains shut. Thence it is that various diseases both originate and are cured. This porous action is called instinct, nor does it belong to the consciousness of our minds, because these forms are so subtle as not to affect the papilla or organs. This the soul has reserved to itself, nor will it reveal this by any sense to the mind, which might wish, with its will taking the lead, to administer this economy, in which case the whole animal chemistry would easily be overthrown and destroyed. Accordingly, this sense should be the most acute and pure of all the senses of touch. End of section 11.